Good morning all, welcome back to the farm. And I've come up today with a particular job in mind, and that is I need to turn the compost that's in these two bins. Since I made them back in October last year, they've just been left alone, but since about late November the heat totally went out of these compost bays, so now's the time to get them turned into another bay. But as you can see, there is no other bay, so I need to build a new bay, get these two compost bins turned into one bay, and then that will give me two empty bays. And what I really need to be doing is making the most of all the green material that's growing at the minute. We are now on the 17th of April, and all the grass and all the weeds are really starting to shoot up. And because I'm planning to do no dig systems up here, I'm going to need a lot, and I mean a lot of compost. So I'm really going to pull my finger out and try and make the most of everything, all the resources that we've got up here. We've got massive patches of stinging nettles in this area, grass galore, and this is an area where the cows and the sheep can't get in to graze it off, so I'll be mowing it to put into these compost bins. We've also got lots of wood chip out in the wood, and we've also got just here a pile of manure that I've been fetching off the field. So not all the bays are going to have manure in, because some of the plants, especially the plants that go in the greenhouse, they don't want a high nitrogen rich soil mixture. But things like potatoes, your brassicas, they want all the nitrogen, so I'm going to have to be quite clever in how I make some of this compost, so that I've got some high carbon material for the greenhouses and high nitrogen material for some of the growing beds. So I need to be knocking up at least one more composting bay just on the end there, preferably two if I can, because like I said, there is tons and tons of green stuff pushing up at the minute. So if I can get it cut down, get it in my compost bin, I will be able to make the most of this abundance that's growing this time of year. You can see inside these compost bins they've sunk down quite a bit. After I'd finished filling them, I did top them up as they sank down. I think I topped this left hand bay up, I topped it up 3 times, but you can see on the thermometer it's not really very warm, just under 20 degrees. And in this bay on the right there is a bit of new material gone on top here. I'll be taking that off, and again very cold, but I'm hoping that once I've turned these two bins into one, mixed all the materials up again, that will reinvigorate it and it will start heating up. I want it to be a hot compost. I have been chucking a lot of weeds, a lot of things that you don't want their seeds spreading in your growing area. So by making it hot, that's going to kill off all unwanted weed seeds. Right, so there we go, we've got one more bay added to this composting setup. Only took a few minutes, and I've built it in exactly the same way as I built these two, and that's with pallets. I've not kept the pallets whole, I knocked the back off, so I've got a flat sheet of panelled wood, and that's just so that we're not wasting any space between each of the beds. And at the bottom of this bed I've just put some cardboard that I'd got knocking around that had already gotten wet, and there is some wood ash that's come out of the essay from at home. That's gone in just to improve on this compost. So now what's left is I need to get the fork out and empty these two bays into the new bay. So we'll just take the front off this compost bay and we'll finally get to see exactly how well it has composted down already. You know what, it's not looking too bad. It's not looking too much like compost though. But you can see all the individual layers that are in there as we packed it. And and it's shrunk down at least by half. But to be completely honest, this top layer I added after October. I think it was January when I stopped putting stuff in this bed. So that's probably a reason why this top layer isn't so well composted. Hopefully the bottom will be a little bit better. So there is one thing I'm noticing as I'm getting towards the bottom of this pile, is that it's very dry. I know you don't want it really wet, but I think this is a little too dry, so what I'm going to have to do is give it a drink. The top layer, because it's not been covered for a couple of weeks, was really quite wet, but from halfway down all the way to the bottom, it's really dry. Even though we are mixing it a little bit with the top layers, which is wet, I don't think that's going to give enough moisture. So we'll get the watering can, and just as I'm turning it into this bay, I'm going to give it a couple of full watering cans just to wet it down a bit. So I have just completely emptied this middle bay. Not really looking much like compost at the minute, and it is very dry. I've already given it 6 full watering cans full of water through the different layers. I'm just hopeful that now it's got a bit more water and it's all mixed in together, it's going to compost down a little bit better. It's hard to think that in another 4 or 5 months this will be usable compost. I don't know, I might be pleasantly surprised. We'll have to wait and see. So my usual way of composting is just in the plastic Daleks at home in the garden, and all I would do is chuck everything in there that I get throughout the year, leave it. I don't exclude any water, I don't put a lid on, and it seems to compost down really well. Now I don't know whether because I've had a lid on this for most of its life, that's why it's so dry, or whether this is how dry I want it. It just doesn't seem to have broken down as much as I would have thought. If you've got any experience in composting in this way, drop me a message in the comments. I might be doing something wrong, or this might be exactly how it's supposed to be. Well, let's see if this compost bin has fared any differently. I've just noticed there's quite a lot of fungi growing across the bottom. We'll see if this is just as dry. Well, that looks a little bit more like it straight away. It's just a lot wetter. Broken down a little bit better than the other one. Well, I've about got as much as I can get in this compost bay right now, and to be fair, there's not much left in that other bin, but you can see just how much more wet this is compared to the bottom of the other bay where I'm standing. This is quite damp. I haven't given this any water. There's been dry spots, but there's been some very wet spots. So it should even itself out. Well, like I said, this compost bin isn't going to take any more material today. So in the next couple of days, when that's sunk down, I'll get the remainder out of this bay, and that will give me 2 empty bays now to concentrate my composting efforts from all the stuff that's growing around here right now. The only problem is I'm going to need a few more, so I'll need to find some more pallets to create more composting bays. But one thing I'm going to show you now is something that I thought had happened for a while, but I wasn't 100% sure, and that is that one of these piglets is actually pregnant. It's not ideal because that means that it will have bred with its brother, or half brother, so it's not ideal. I have researched the situation, and there is quite a lot of inbreeding within pigs, especially in the pedigree sector, where people want to concentrate on a particular feature of an animal. This was totally by accident, but it's actually Peanut Junior. I thought that she was just a really big pig, and she was the biggest by far, and that's probably why she's pregnant. Because she was the biggest, she probably became sexually mature before the others. But it's very obvious now that Peanut Junior is pregnant. And there she is, there's Peanut Junior, and you can see just how big her belly has grown. There's absolutely no mistaking that she's pregnant. I was watching her earlier today, and you can see her belly squirming around, and you can see her udders starting to swell. I think she's not going to be very long until she's given birth, so we're going to have to get her out of this pen and let her farrow on her own in the railway carriage away from these others. None of these others seem to be pregnant. They're not showing any sign, and they do come in and out of season, and that's another indicator that's made me realise that she was pregnant quite a while ago. She wasn't, whilst the others were coming in and out of season, she wasn't. She was getting bigger, but at first I thought she was just greedy and getting the bulk of the food. It's not an ideal situation having them breed brother and sister, or half brother and half sister, but we've just got to deal with it. So we'll get her moved out, and hopefully she'll farrow successfully, and there'll be plenty more pigs on the farm. So I'll leave it till a little bit later on tonight, when these piglets are hungry again, and I'll tempt Peanut Junior out with some food and walk around to the railway carriage. But right now I'm going to go home and find some lunch, because I've been here all morning shoveling compost around, and I'm rather hungry. So thanks for watching. I'm Benj. You've been watching Doing Outdoors. I'll see you next time.